Hi, everyone, and welcome back to In the Vine Connects with your host, Melissa. And here with me today, I have
Shekinah
and Kat.
And Kat. Thank you much. Thank you so much, Kat, for filling in for our friends. Literally, it takes one of you to make up for two of them. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding, but we really appreciate you being here.
Of course, I'm so grateful for the opportunity. Oh, sorry. I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
We always like tell Kat that she talks so freaking low. Like she's just so low. And in my family, like we're all loud. As you guys cannot tell, because
that's what happened. She got overwhelmed.
Trying to change it up a little bit.
Like we were in the car, and I was like literally leaning over to her side like this, just like trying to hear her. But anyway, hello. We really appreciate you filling in for a little bit. But now you must go, little birdie. Okay. I'm just kidding. No, I really thank you. Okay, so what we're gonna talk about today is well, first, let me ask you the panel questions. The first question is, what's the right response when somebody asks, what can you bring to the table? And if I could be honest, I hate this question. Not that it's been asked to me and not that I've asked it to somebody, but I feel like this is one of the most like ridiculous questions.
Yeah, you think so?
But I'm just going to wait to see what you guys say and how you guys answer, because I'm very, very intrigued. I'm sad that Denise isn't here to answer this question. So Denise, please, when you hear this, make sure you drop a comment and tell us what you would say, okay? Thank you.
I feel like we just like made eye contact with you first.
I feel like when people ask that question, I'm like, so you think this is a transaction? It's kind of hard to say like my response to that question. One, I've never been asked that, but two, it feels like when that person's asking that, like, this is just a transaction for you.
Yes.
Yeah, because like,
I feel like it's a job interview question.
Yeah.
Like I immediately went to like, what would I tell my future boss? Like,
exactly. Yeah, but if I had to like legitimately answer, I'd be like, well, I'm a woman. This is what a woman does.
Yeah.
You're a man. What's a man do? Are you gonna do it?
Yeah.
So it just reminds me of like that thing I brought up earlier of like of just like this video between like American men and Russian men and like how they would answer like, like would you provide for your wife? Does she have to work in your marriage? And just like the dynamic answers.
Yeah.
But I would imagine my response to be like, I would go back to be like, well, I'm a woman. This is my role.
Yeah.
This is what I'm supposed to be doing and what I plan to be doing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think the wording of it, if someone were straight, what do you bring to the table? I'd be like,
myself.
The wording would definitely throw me off. I've never been asked that, but
I'd be like, nothing. Bye.
Yeah, exactly. Like, no.
Your table.
Yeah.
It would definitely have, like, I immediately start thinking of like interview answers, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm really organized. Like,
I can make some
I can
food.
answer phones.
Oh my goodness.
So that was like where my mind immediately went. And I was like, wait a minute, it's a job interview. But I think like if we look at if we change the wording of it, that's definitely been discussed, especially when you get a little more serious. I've asked a guy, like, what do you think a role of a husband is? You know, and so that would be kind of the way that I would word it so that he can think more about what you just said. Like, well, I'm a woman. I would bring to the table what a woman brings to the table. You know what I mean? But like, what does that look like specifically for you? And what do you think the role as a husband? How do you look forward to fulfilling that role, pretty much?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the wording of it would definitely throw me off. But if I can get past the wording, I think it's a good question to ask. Because it makes the person think, like, what would I bring into a relationship? What, you know what I mean? And I think it's a good question. Like I said, it would throw me off. I think the wording of it would throw me off. There's different ways you can ask it, though.
Yeah, I think it reveals the intent, right? Or you should know what the intention is, because the way that I've heard it asked is not in okay, like, how are we going to make this relationship work? What are we both bringing to the table? The way that I've heard it asked is like, I've got options, and so why should I pick you? And
so I'm saying, like, it feels like a job interview. Like, we're interviewing just a bunch of people right now, so why are you the best candidate?
Yeah. And to me, I understand like what you were saying. Like, I understand that there's that aspect of like, okay, like, this is how I'm gonna carry my weight in a relationship. This is both of our functions in a relationship, and this is how we complement each other. But when there's like this aspect of like, why should I give you the time of day, like in a derogatory way, to me that's just like, man, like such a slap in the face. Because I remember I was like I was speaking with a friend, if I could say that, and he was like, yeah, you know, like this girl, she was like telling me this, and telling me like, I could do this for you, I could do that for you, and blah blah blah, and it was nothing that somebody else couldn't do, you know. And so I think it brings me back to this, like many people can fill a role, but not everybody can like fulfill what you need. Does that make sense? Like again, going back to the job interview, right? Like there are a lot of people whose qualifications would meet, but there's only one right person for the job. And so how is that established in a relationship? It's through the unveiling, right? Because what I would do, what I've done in past relationships, what I've done in past dating or whatever, it hasn't always been the same. Right? It's what that person draws out of me, and it's the way that I respond to them. And so to me, it's like, you know, I get it. I understand like the basics of like how we were even talking in one of the other episodes where it's just like, okay, like we get it. Like the first episode, the first date doesn't always have to be like, how many kids do you want? You know, but because there's that aspect of discovering one another, right? Like with sometimes like I know relationships with somebody didn't want kids, and all of a sudden they met the right person, and all of a sudden they're like, I want 10 million kids, you know? Because that person draws it out, and now they can see themselves in that function. And so to me, I think an appropriate response, if I could say, if there is an appropriate response, would be like, what can I bring to the table is what like it would be complimentary of what it is that you're offering to me. You know what I mean? Like if you're offering me like, for example, I'm a woman, right? So then we strongly believe in like the traditional roles. So the woman is a homemaker while the man is a provider. So to me, it's like, are you going to give me a home? Okay, then I'll bring you a homemaker, right? I remember a guy that I used to date, he was like, you know, how do you know that you like, that you would have fallen in love with somebody else? Like when all I want to do is like nurture them and build them up. And so then he was like, oh, like that's a good question. I mean, that's a good answer. And I was like, yeah, I know, but are you gonna draw that out of me? You know,
that's really good.
And so because to me, that's the role of a woman. It's like to nurture and to bring out and to like, you know, build. And so but yeah, like the person when they this friend, when they told me this, I was like, oh, like that's nasty, you know what I mean? Because this person was like, whatever, I'm not gonna talk smack, but yeah, just recently I was just like, oh, I don't, you know, that sucks that you're in that position, you know. I don't know, what do you ladies
I agree. And like I think that like we said, that's just a blunt question, and like it's like job interview status, and that's a question that you should be looking for in the relationship, how they act, how they respond, and like you said, what they draw out in you. To just sit down and ask that, what are you going to bring to the table? It's like nothing. Like,
what do you want, 3 cows?
Exactly, like it's just like I get, like, you know, and again, this is coming from somebody who treated dating like a job interview for so long, and that's always been my mentality. And I think actually being in the Vine has really been shifting that mentality.
This is low key Anisha kinda.
Yeah, this is completely different approach for me. But you know, because I would hear that question and be like, all right, I have my answer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But looking at dating again, is going back to our first episode of this season, we talked just it's okay to be lighthearted.
Yeah,
it's okay to have fun, and that kind of question I don't think can be honestly answered through a direct verbal response. You have to look for it in the relationship.
That's good.
I can only see like that question somewhat being appropriate to a degree. It's like when you're trying to like find out like the logistics, like from like what I've heard from like premarital counseling, it's like, oh, like when you get married and you have kids, like how is this gonna work? Like how is mom gonna stay at home?
Right. And again, like, there's specifics, like the, you know, like I said, I was like, I would ask, you know, as what do you see your role as a husband being? And you know, again, like how are we gonna parent? What's the role? You know what I mean? There's specifics, not just a general like, all right,
like what do I get?
Exactly. It's not a general question. There's very specific things, and again, you start to learn those things as conversations start to happen naturally as you begin to get more serious in your relationship.
Right. It's so good. I still can't believe it. Like, to our listeners out there, have you ever been asked that, or have you ever asked that? And what do you think about that? Like,
let us know.
If somebody were to ask you that, like, what would be your initial like knee-jerk reaction? I am very curious to know. So please let us know. Okay, so for this episode, now we're gonna get in a little deep, okay? Because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and they brought up something that really got me thinking, and I was like, man, yeah, like that really hurts. So one of the things that they said is like the person that they were with and they dated for a very long time, they just refused to change. They refused to be the person that my friend needed them to be. And lo and behold, they break up, and the person that this person ends up getting with, they become the person that my friend wanted them to be for this next person. And I was like, man, like that is so heartbreaking. And I think a lot of people in one way or another have experienced that, right? When there's like such a heartbreak and you make the wrong decision, or not the wrong decision, the hard decision to break up. And then all of a sudden, not only do they move on before you as you're still healing, but they become the person that you wanted them to be for the next person. And so what advice do you ladies have when it comes to that, if any?
That's unfortunately not a rare situation.
It's not.
It's not. And, you know, I think it's not rare because looking at it from the opposite perspective, oftentimes when one person gets fed up and says, you know, you're just not treating me right, and leaves the relationship, it wakes the other person up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a real maturing that happens. And so, so by the time they date the next person, they find somebody else, they're like, oh, okay, like I know I need to treat this person differently than the last girl. And unfortunately, the last girl is looking at it going,
yeah,
you know, like, wait a minute, hold on, you know.
For sure, yeah.
And it's frustrating, but that's the encouragement that I would give to the person who feels like they didn't get what they deserved, but the person after them did. You, unfortunately, it's not your fault. It's not that he didn't care for you. It's not that it was just bad timing. He wasn't mature enough, and unfortunately, you were that maturing factor he needed to change. But don't take on the responsibility. It's not that you weren't pretty enough or good enough. It wasn't your fault. It really was just comes down to this person was immature when you dated them. And because of you, though, they are now a better person. And so it's a bummer that they didn't get to be that better person with you. But take some kind of joy and excitement that they are at least now a mature, better person, and that you got to be a big approach of that in their life. And now you know, and from your side, you're more mature now because now you know what being mistreated is like. Now you know what red flags to avoid. And now you can go after that man who is now more mature because of his last girlfriend.
Yeah. You got to thank her.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, it's just the circle of life. No, but really, honestly, like, especially when you're younger, you're going to date a guy who's immature. You're going to date a girl who's immature. And but that's how you mature, is you get yourself out there and you move forward with life and know that it's 98% of the time never your own fault. It is really just, it's not anything more than just immaturity. You know what I mean? And so that would be my advice, is just, you know, you both were immature. You chose him. So there's that end. But that's okay. That's okay. You know, and then like I said, but you also were that person that said, you know what? I just know that I need better, which is great. That's an amazing place to be. That's confidence. That's an independent person. It is okay to look at the person you're dating and going, you know I deserve better. And you just move on politely, honorably, and recognize that there was a maturing that happened on both ends as a result.
Sure. Yeah.
I think my advice would be to that. My advice to that would be like, don't take it personal. Because I kind of want to like, I don't think it's always that the person is immature. Well, that happens a lot, especially young dating. I'm in college. I see it a lot. But I think that it's also kind of what you said earlier. The right person draws it out of that person.
Yeah.
I think guys are very much capable of any relationship, whether you're younger or older, of like recognizing that when you love a woman, or like, and it goes both ways, but like when you love somebody, oh, I want to do this for them. I want to do that. They mentioned this. I'm going to listen. Like how we talked about it in another episode. Yeah. And so I think if that person didn't do it for you and they're doing it for someone else, it's not a personal thing. It's just, it's so hard to say, and it's like, I don't want to be so blunt about it, but it's like, oh, I'm sorry, like it didn't work out.
Because we know we're talking to that one person that's really dealing with the heartbreak of a situation of like, but he was the one, or she was the one.
It's like, but you know what, like when you find that person, or like when you do, it's like, oh, like it's not gonna be all this effort you have to put in. It's like to a degree, like it will flow out effortlessly, and it's like, yeah, you are deserving of that, and I'm sorry that you didn't get that here, but the right person will bring that out, and you don't have to work for it. You don't have to sell yourself for it. Don't bring yourself down for that.
So. Yes. And disclaimer, the friend that I was having this conversation with, she's like, she's glad that happened, by the way. She's like,
yeah. And her again, it goes back to that maturing process. Yeah. You look back on it and you're like, oh, thank God it didn't work out with this person.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure I sealed that part, because now we're speaking generically, right? Yeah. So now speaking generically, I want to say, I do agree it's not your fault, but there's also an introspection that needs to take place, right? Where like she kind of said, like there's a maturing process that also happens with you, where you should take a look and be like, all right, what in me allowed these boundaries to be crossed? Mm-hmm. Did I not have a boundary? Did I not set these expectations? Or did I set these expectations, but they didn't allow them, like they didn't follow them, and I just decided to let them go.
That's good.
Because I think there is a level of responsibility that we need to take. And I think in taking ownership of your action in it also helps you heal from it, because you're like, you know what? I think I might have been an accomplice to that. Like, I allowed this to happen for this long. I dedicated this time, because I know people that have been in relationships for years and they just don't want to let it go because it's all that they've known, right? And but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, like, yeah, the other person messed up and that sucks. But what in you was broken, or what in you allowed that to happen, And so not shifting blame or anything, but there's an empowerment that comes when you just decide like, hey, you know what? Like, I shouldn't have allowed that. Why did I allow that? So let me move forward, right? And so there's that. But I agree. Like, I'm so sorry. Like that kind of stuff sucks. Yeah. I mean, I remember. Thankfully, this one wasn't too hard for me. This one was just like. But remember the guy that I dated when we were living together? So okay, this I have to say this story because I have to say this story. Okay, so. I think I might have said it like in our first season.
We brought it up at one point, really briefly, but then we moved on real quick. Yeah. I'm so glad you're ready to tell the story.
So this guy, I dated him for like, I don't know, like a month. And this was when I tried out online dating, by the way.
Did he meet your family?
He did not meet actually he did. I had him over. Oh my gosh, that's weird. But it didn't work out. It didn't work out. Dang it, because I brought him in 30 days. All right.
No, that was not the reason. It
wasn't the reason. I don't know.
Definitely not the reason with this guy. Okay, continue your
I don't
story.
know how much I want to say. Dang it. Okay, so anyway, I dated this guy. And I don't remember how long ago I said this, but he was just not it. Our first date, we split it in half.
I was honestly surprised that it went to a second date, and I was just there to support my friend.
She was. I didn't have in the mind. I didn't have anything to help me. Okay. So, I did.
We needed the story.
We did. The Lord knew I needed content. So yeah, we did that, right? And so then the second date was and keep in mind, like, I was not, during that time, I didn't do, like, being alone with guys, right? So then, but yeah, I invited him over to my house.
We were there. I was also...
Yeah, Shekinah was there, and I think my former roommate was there, too. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so we were there, and then we decided to go get food. Like, that's not even part of the story, but so I'm not going to go that way. But anyway, I remember we found out that he had a girl best friend, okay? And Yessie right away was like, girl, like, that's a red flag. Like, you should not, right? And I was like, okay. And so then I prayed about it, right? And I just felt like, like, this guy wasn't it for a lot of reasons. The main reason was because I just didn't like who I needed to be when this guy, like, the only way that we clicked was when I would talk to him about, like, my BC life, like, before Christ. Mm. And I was like, that's not the kind of ground that I want to lay, right? And so then I remember I was like, right, Lord, like, I think this guy and his best friend need to be together. And I was like, I feel like that just makes sense. And so then I remember I ended it with him, and I was like, right, like, it's just not it. And I remember I prayed to the Lord, and I was like, Lord, like, if this guy is supposed to be with his best friend, like, I pray that you would bless them, like, that you would open up their eyes to one another, blah, blah, blah. And and lo and freaking behold, like what, a month later, I find out that these two are dating, okay? And the girl, turns out that she knew Shekinah.
Yeah, she was my friend.
Yeah.
That was so random because she was a photographer and I followed her on Instagram, and so that's how we found out. I think was she was posting pictures of her and her new boyfriend, and I was like, "Hey, wait!" I was like, "That's the friend."
Shekinah was ready to fight. She's like, "Was he dating both of you at the same time?" I was like, "Nah." But anyway, so then that happened. They
I just
started
wanted to
dating.
find a reason to fight him, to be honest.
Yeah, because so many. He wasn't trifling or anything. He was a little boy.
Yeah,
he was a little
immature.
Yeah, he was a little immature. So then the girl hits up Shekinah and she's
Bold
like,
move.
"Hey, please tell your roommate that I'm just like so grateful for her." I can't believe this happened. She's like, "I'm just so grateful for her because, you know, like so and so is like really getting deep into the things of the Lord. Like, the Lord is just like, he brought them together and it was God's timing."
He finally opened his eyes and I've been praying this whole time. And it's because of her that she opened that door for him to like finally like, I was like, I was really debating. I was like, I should tell Melissa. I should definitely. Hey, Melissa, got this message.
Yeah, so that happened. And so it was funny though, because I was like, yeah, like, and I wish I could tell you guys it was the only story that I have like that, but it's not. I think I have like 2 or 3 that are similar to that. But the reason why I'm saying that is because I've experienced that, right? Because it's not just when they move on and they become that person, but also when you prepare them for the next person. And it's crazy. Honestly, I've had that. Like, I unfortunately have like this.
It's a talent.
I have this discernment gift that I'm literally able to map things out the way that they're going to plan out, like to a T. And so it's happened a few times and I'm just like, bro, like I called it. And I think that's the Lord being gracious to me. But anyway, so then these people ended up getting married. Yeah. They got married. And if I can tell you,
Good job, Melissa.
Matchmaking in the vine.
Yeah.
Come on Sundays. I'll pray
you
for
date
you.
them, you prepare them, and then you send them on their way.
Disciple them. Send them out. And it's fun. Before I would cry. I'm not gonna before I would cry. But now I'm just like, Lord, like thank you, you know, because I get to be a part of that story. I don't know.
They needed your prayers.
They needed my prayers.
Yeah.
No, but you know, it takes a lot, to be quite honest. Like, it takes a lot to be able to deal with that kind of stuff. But I think when you really come to terms with the fact that what's for you is for you, you learn to let go what is not for you. Mm-hmm. And that's hard, right? That's so hard because
really, it just comes down to identity.
Yes.
You have to know yourself. You have to know who God called you to be, and way easier said than done.
Oh, for sure.
I understand that. But really, like, I really love this example used before. It's like, I can come up to you and be like, wow, I really hate your red sweater. How does that make you feel? You know, like you're not wearing a red sweater. So, okay, you know, like rude, but also not applicable to me. So I'm just going to continue living my life. When you can really establish the identity of Christ, knowing who you are, knowing you're fearfully, wonderfully made, finding it in scripture and applying it to your life and living it out daily. When you can get to that place, dating really isn't a scary thing, because again, someone can come up to you and insult you or do something, say something, or act a certain way around you that might have in the past offended you. But when you know your identity, you know that's not what you deserve, it just kind of rolls off the shoulder a lot easier, because I'm not wearing a red sweater.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So if they make you feel down, they talk down to you, they don't treat you right, you can just, okay, but I'm not wearing a red sweater, you know? Like,
and my sweater's blue.
Exactly. So
and I paid for it. You ain't pay my bills.
Really though. And so before you start dating, before you start getting into a relationship with anybody, whether it's even friendship wise, really practice I am statements, really understand who God called you to be. Because when you start dating, you're opening yourself up to heartbreak.
Yeah.
But with that, it's so much easier to navigate and walk through and push through, because you know who you are.
Yeah.
And I know that like you said, like in the past, that would have made you like bawl your eyes out and cry. But when your identity shifted and you knew, like, now you're thanking God, thank you that I get to be that for people. And because you know who you are, and you know so that's what I'm saying, is your mentality shifted. And so for our listeners, you're having a hard time dating. This person maybe looked at you funny. I saw a video recently of a girl crying because she was just like, I went on a first date, and as soon as he looked at me, and he was like, no, and walked away. And she said, it's really, she goes, can you guys just like pray for me? It's really hard dating when you're fat, is the words that she used. And I was like, girl, first of all, she was gorgeous. And I'm not just saying that, like, she was really pretty. And so it really broke my heart. But simultaneously, it's just like, oh, man, like, you have to know your identity, because
for sure,
that kind of response from somebody who's confident and knows their identity and what they deserve is, oh, thank God he walked away. Thank God he made it obvious that he wasn't interested in the first few minutes, and not crying and like, what's wrong with me? It's like, clearly something's wrong with this guy. And that doesn't take place until you first establish your identity, your self-esteem, and your self-confidence. And the best way to do that, I know it sounds cliche coming from a Christian, but it's the absolute truth. Read the Word of God.
Absolutely.
Read the Word of God. It is the best definition of who you are and how much he loves you.
Yes. And I think, so 2 things. I absolutely agree with that. My friend, she recently sent me like this video of like talking about some things. And one of the things that it talked about in there is like, how can you identify if somebody's good for you is by first knowing your purpose. What are you called to do? What is the Lord said over your life? And if that person comes in and just like matches that, then you know, okay, now we can walk together, because we know that our purposes are very similar. And honestly, I haven't told her this, but because it just happened today, but I was in prayer, and I was thinking about about a particular scenario. And, you know, as girls, I think more than anything, and it may happen with guys, I don't know, but I was thinking about like the scenario, and I was like, oh, you know, like maybe it can work, like blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, no, like it doesn't fit my life. Like it doesn't fit the word that God has spoken over my life. And so then I started replaying the prophetic words, because I have prophetic words over my future husband, the way that we're gonna like work, the kind of man that I need, and all these things. And I'm like, oh, this person doesn't fit the bill. So then I'm like, why am I even entertaining that? And so then right away I was able to take my thoughts captive and just move forward. And so when you realize like, okay, like this is the word for my life, this is what God has spoken, then you no longer entertain the other things, right? And so I think that's why it's so crucial, like to look to surround yourself in a situation. Ask the Lord. Like, you know, we talked about lists, especially on our first episode and our first seasons. We talked about lists and what that list looked like. And Shekinah had the best story when it came to that, where it's like you go to the Lord and ask him, okay, what should this list be? Right. And so I really want to encourage you guys, like, yeah, you know, it may suck. Like, honestly, heartbreak is never fun. But when you learn to just be like, you know what, like, all right, we're done with that. Like, let's continue moving forward. Then that's it. Like, don't let something linger longer than it needs to. Like, life is too short for that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
You guys have just said that so well. And like, I feel like the only thing that I could add on of what you were saying, it's like, yeah, like this person, they might be great, but they're not fitting in with what like God called me to do. It just brings me back to what Jackie said in her interview, good things versus God things.
Yes.
There's a lot of great people out there, and a lot of like, there's a lot of great women, a lot of great men. Sometimes it's just a friendship that you can have, not girlfriends. Not girl best friends or guy best friends, okay?
Yeah.
For the opposite sex. But it's like, yeah, like this person is really great, but is this like, again, for me, is this what I'm called to? Is this the person that I was made to compliment and to build with?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know, I had this conversation just not too long ago with my mom. Not too long ago I had a conversation with another woman, and she was talking about how miserable she was in her marriage. And it was just stagnant. It was stale. It wasn't moving anywhere, you know. And
not your mom.
No, not my mom. No,
Another woman.
Sorry, I backtracked. It led into a conversation with my mom later. But and I felt so heartbroken because it wasn't anything immoral happening. It was just stagnant. It was just a one-way relationship. It was just the roommate kind of situation, which unfortunately I hear all too often. And I went home that day and I said, Mom, and this is gonna sound so bad, guys, but I think it'll kind of lead into the severity of it and really help you understand what we're talking about. I looked at my mom and I said, you know, Mom, I realized something today. I'm kind of glad that I got a divorce because it was so bad and the things that he did were so immoral that I had an out and I had the opportunity to heal from that situation. And I was like, but talking to this woman, man, long term, as horrible as what I went through was, long term wise, it is so much better. I'm not saying either is great, but it is 10 times, a million times better to be single and miserable than miserable and married to someone who's just not trying, to someone who's just given up. And long-term wise, that's just such a stuck place to be, because you're not just carrying your own weight and your own trauma, your own hurts. You also have to carry the weight of this person who isn't even trying. Yeah. And so a lot of people feel like, I just want to get married. I want to tell you, no, you don't just want to get married. You don't just want to find the guy who looks at you and takes you to McDonald's on the first date. You don't, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. If that's your vibe, it's fine.
That meal's going to be with you for years.
Yeah. But it really, honestly, though, like, no, you don't just want to get married. Yeah. Because it's so much easier to heal, to go out, to make decisions about your own finances, your own life, your own spirituality, your own relationship with the Lord when you're by yourself than it is when you're partnered with somebody who's just not trying. Yeah. And so, like I said, that's very heartbreaking, but I am very, very grateful for the heartbreak that I went through, because I went through it. It was horrible, but God has healed me so much, and I'm looking back on it and I'm just like, instead of looking at the hurt, I'm looking at how God saved me from remaining in a horrible marriage and how I get to move on from that. Yeah. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. And so for you single ladies out there, for you single men out there, just remember, it is okay to have boundaries. Yes. Have worth in yourself. Understand that you deserve better. And if that means you have to be single a little longer, it's worth it. It's the truth. It's worth it. If you have to be single a little longer than all your friends, it is worth it. Yeah. Do not give up on your value and what God has for you. It goes back to that purpose. Understand your purpose. Understand who God called you to be. And you're not going to allow somebody to take that away from you. Mm-hmm. So like I said, being miserable in any situation is, miserable. Yeah. But when you're single, you have so much more room to grow, and you have more of the option and what's the word I'm looking for? You have more options to heal. Yeah. You have more room to grow. Opportunity. Thank you. Whereas when you're married, you kind of have to drag that person along with you, and it's a lot difficult if they're not interested. Yeah. So no, you don't just want to be married. You don't just want to be with somebody because they looked at you with kind eyes at one point. Not worth it. That's not worth it. Long-term wise, you're going to look back at your life and just really regret it. Mm-hmm. So I know it's really sad. Sorry.
But it's worth it.
It really is. Like I said, heartbreak is, it's heartbreaking. But there's so much maturing that takes place, and there's so much strength that takes place. Take it from me. I've been through divorce, and I'm able to be in this place because I made the decision of, I'm going to look at the positive, and I'm going to look at how God saved me from this marriage. I'm going to look at my opportunities that I have going forward and the strengths that have taken place as a result. And I really am. There's so much joy, and there's so much. I love my life. I look at my little apartment in my mountain now every night, and I'm just like, thank you, Jesus. Like, I love it. There's so much peace. And I promise you that there's that for you. Wherever you're at in your life, there's that for you as well. But you have to make the decision to feel that way.
I agree.
Rant done.
Yeah. I feel like that's a good place to leave it at. So a tip for this week, I would say, I think it would be to look at your track record. Look back. Be like, okay, what is a common occurrence in my past relationships? Mm-hmm. What is something that I do like, and what is something that I don't like? And once you take that assessment, once you do that research, and once you look at it down on paper, make a plan on how you're going to move forward. Mm-hmm. Look at the things that you like, how you've been doing, and look at the things that you don't like, how you have been doing. And that way you're able to kind of hone in where it is that you want to go next. So hopefully that helps to see any patterns in your life, maybe any family patterns in your life, so that you can heal from that, and that you can continue to build on the good things. So thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate you. Stay tuned for next week. We have some special guests in the studio. Bye. Bye.